This is the word of the Lord. And Graeme is going to tell us about it.
Good morning. It's good to be back. For one reason and another, it's been a little while since I've been able to be here. So it's great to be with you this morning as we enter into this time of year in the church's life that's called Advent. And you see the colour purple is assigned for this time of year as we lead towards Christmas. And it's a bit counterintuitive or against our culture, the way the church in its wisdom, going back hundreds of years, has said the way to prepare for Christmas is not just to immediately get immersed in the Christmas story. You notice that certainly wasn't the reading we had this morning. But the way is actually to think seriously about life and what is the significance of God coming to the world. That's why it's this serious colour of purple that we also have in the church in Lent, the lead up to Easter. And it's about coming. The word Advent means coming. And as we lead into the time of year where we think of the coming of Jesus at Christmas, our readings for the next few weeks open up different ways to think about the significance of that. And as you saw about today, an ultimate coming together. And this is not just nice sentimental story, is it? But it's designed to give us the opportunity to think about who we are and what God is doing in the world. So with that framing, let me pray as we lead into the theme today. Loving God, thank you for your presence with us, that you are the God who speaks and that you have spoken to us in Jesus and in the scriptures. We pray as we think about them today that you would open our minds, that we might hear your voice, see your word and know your way. In Jesus' name, amen. One of the delights of my life currently is being able to spend time with grandchildren. And I have one who's a 3-year-old who's just at that beautiful phase where you play a game. And one of the ones that he loves and I love is coming, ready or not. Yes, hide and seek, the tried and trusted game, which interestingly I discovered has a variant. I was always brought up to say coming, ready or not. But my son said when we play the game, we say, ready or not, here I come. Now that is a significant question, isn't it? Which version is it? So I went to the source of all wisdom, Google and AI, of course, and it said happily that both variants are acceptable. Phew. So I can say coming, ready or not. The beautiful thing is Parker, who's 3, has seen me play. You know when you're an adult and the child's hiding in plain sight, so you go around pretending you haven't seen them and you say, I wonder where he is, and he's sitting right there and you pretend. So now when it's his turn to come looking, that's what he does because he thinks that's how you play the game. So it's very cute. Coming ready or not, though, is the theme of our reading. And whatever way you think about the second coming of Jesus, as it's called, or the ultimate picture here of a time when God will bring everything to completion in history, it has this warning over and over again here, and the theme of it's going to happen at a time when many people won't be expecting it. So whatever you do, be ready. Don't let it catch you by surprise. Now, why is it such an important idea, this idea of the return of Jesus or the coming of Jesus in this way to make everything right? And the Bible's very clear. It has this element of an end to history in some way, or of Jesus coming to put everything right, and in that there'll be some sort of judgment or reckoning. Why is that so important? One of my favourite jokes, and I came across this in the world's top 50 jokes, goes like this. A woman has identical twins and gives them up for adoption. One goes to a family in Egypt and is named Amal. The other goes to Spain and is named Juan. Years later, Juan sends a picture of himself to his mum. Upon receiving it, she tells her husband that she wished she also had a picture of Amal. But her husband said, "Wouldn't you love to know the punchline? Wouldn't you love to know how it ends?" That's why we need this theme of the return of Jesus. Because it's saying what begins with God creating, and then God's love being in the world, and then this incredibly incisive moment when God comes in Jesus into the world as a child, that is not the end of the story, because it leaves so many things hanging and uncertain. This great love that God has unleashed in the world in Jesus, is that going to triumph in the end? Well, the people who ignore God and act totally selfishly, are they going to get away with it? Well, the Bible's view is that history is not just meandering, but there's a sense of purpose, that it's moving somewhere. And the picture of Jesus coming and returning is the Bible's way, in first century language, I suspect, of saying there is going to be a time when God will make everything right. And the picture you see on the service sheet is that first century picture of Jesus coming on the clouds of heaven like some unidentified flying object. And whether it's like that or whether that's just first century picture language for saying something is going to happen, it's more how I see it now. But it is saying it's not just a meandering along in this world, but that God is at work. And what was seen in a powerful way in Jesus, it wasn't the beginning of God's involvement. God's always involved in the world, but that decisive event is going to come to a point where things move along even further, where we might say the return of Jesus will usher in some new way of being. Now, how will that be? Well, this first century language is like a cosmic unraveling of everything, and God comes and the world as we know it is changed somehow. And whether it's like that or whether it'll be some climate catastrophe that brings end to life as we know it on this planet, I don't know. And we're not meant to know, I think. It's in that hazy sense in which a prophet, and even Jesus with his sense of being from God and yet living in this world, is able to say, I can see this is going to happen somehow, but the details of it are vague. We shouldn't be surprised that such an event is shrouded in this picturesque language, because it's trying to come to grips with something that is, in a sense, beyond our understanding. We always run into those challenges when we think about afterlife. What happens after we die? What is heaven like? All these things, we have a sense that there's something there, that there's more, but to exactly describe that is difficult. And yet it's an important concept. It's important because the story needs an ending. You know, like a whodunit where you don't get told who did it. It leaves you hanging. Or a joke that needs a punchline. There's creation, there's evil in the world, there's Jesus coming on the cross, and in that beautiful line, God's most awesome work was done in the frailty of your Son. What a beautiful image that is. And yet it appears still that here we are in this world, this decisive event of Jesus on the cross and his resurrection has happened, but life goes on. Yes, we see signs of God at work, but it's not complete, is it? Evil's still there. And in contrast to some philosophies of life that are often associated with Eastern religions, where it's just a wheel that goes round and round forever, the Hebrew thinking is that history is moving towards a particular purpose, and it's captured here in that idea of Jesus returning. That makes sense to me, and it fits with our longing instinctively for justice. We say, the people, and it's easy to say Hitler, but sex slave traffickers or whoever you want to name as being the lowest of the low, are they going to get away with it forever? Is this world just going to keep going on, or is God going to do something? Well, it's described here in terms of a coming of the Son of Man. And the Son of Man is Jesus' way in the Gospels of referring to himself, picking up an idea from the book of Daniel that had one like a Son of Man who comes before God. And Jesus applies that to himself. It's one of the ways in which he describes himself, and it's clear that he's understanding that he's more than just a prophet, but he uses this Son of Man idea. He doesn't directly often say, I am God, but rather refers to himself in these ways in which the Hebrew scriptures describe this God figure who is at work. And he says, I'm coming back. I'm coming back. Now those words, I'm coming back, well, news like that can be either good news or chilling news. Depends on what you expect and where you're at, doesn't it? Think about the words, you're pregnant. To a person who's been trying to have a child for years, that might be the best news they've ever heard. But for the teenage girl who wasn't planning on that at all, that could be devastating. Or the words, interest rate rise. If you're a self-funded retiree, wonderful news. If you're up to your neck in a mortgage, Jesus is coming. Good news or something to fear? I grew up next to an Anglican church over at Balgowlah. Had some lovely modern stained glass windows. My father was the minister there. I used to love playing cricket in the yard. It was right next to the church with my mate Rob. One of the unwritten rules really was that we had to be careful not play with an actual cricket ball next to the church windows. Well, one day Rob convinced me and I said, yeah, okay, we'll play with the cricket ball. And he was quite a fast bowler and I was more of a batsman. And he bowled this wide ball down the leg side. And it wasn't super fast, we were being careful. But it hit a rock in the garden and just looped ever so gently with a tinkling of glass through the window. At which time my mate Rob said, I think I've got to go home. I did my best to clean it up, but I knew I was in for it. And one of my sisters, with the joy and glee of a sister, said to me, oh, just you wait till Dad gets home. And so there I was in absolute dread of my father getting home, having known I was caught out. The news, Dad is coming. So there I was stewing over this at the age of 14 as I was. And finally the moment came and he arrived. I was ready with my story, but nervous. And he walked in and I think he just took one look at the panic, strain and stress on my face, and he knew he didn't have to say much, right? Except to say, I think we'll have to work out how to pay for this, won't we? Now the point is, Dad is coming. On Christmas Day, when that meant we were going to open our presents, was a wonderful thought. But in other circumstances, not so good. The point of this Bible passage in a number of different ways is Jesus is coming. Is that going to be good news that you say yes? Or will you be not ready? Or will you be dreading it? And there are three little pictures used. One is about the coming of Noah, an allusion to the story of Noah and the flood, and the idea that when the rains came and the flood came, people weren't prepared and they weren't ready. A very simple analogy, which if you've ever come across some of the weird theories about the return of Jesus that do the rounds in Christian thinking, sometimes a little verse here gets used to talk about two people are walking up a hill or they're working together and one's taken and one's left, verse 41. Some people have built this whole wonderful theory called the rapture, this idea that Jesus will come some point and all the Christians will go zoop up to heaven and everyone else will be left, and then there'll be a final coming of Jesus a bit later on. If you've never heard that theory, just forget everything I just said. But if you have, and you've come across the books of the rapture, and it's very popular in some American Protestantism, it's rubbish. All it is here is just one little reference to the fact that two people are going to be there and one will be ready and one won't. That's all there is to it. The next image that's used about being ready and not being caught out is about a burglar. A very simple one again. Knock, knock. Who's there? Irish burglar. Now, you're not allowed to tell Irish jokes anymore, are you? So I apologise, and maybe there's good reason for that. The point is, a burglar doesn't announce it. You don't get a text message saying, I am going to rob your place at 2 p.m. tomorrow. The whole point is that it comes when you're not ready. And so, the passage is saying again, just like when Noah and the flood came, some people weren't ready. A burglar comes at an unexpected moment, so don't be caught out. The third one is about a steward or manager. And it's really a reference to the idea that a steward is looking after something on behalf of someone else. And they need to be doing a good job in looking after it, lest the manager or the owner come back and find them caught in the act in the middle of stuffing it up. Now we don't have that idea of managing and steward so much in our world, but think about if you've ever minded a house when someone's on holidays and they have pets and you're nervous as anything that you're going to look after the pet so it all goes well. Well, you're minding the house and they say, just look after the plants and water them every day. Have you ever had that? I've had it once, and a plant died when I was minding the house. It's not a great feeling. Or if you're looking after children in any capacity, as a grandparent, an uncle, an auntie, a friend, you're really a steward on behalf of the parents, aren't you? You're looking after something that has been entrusted to you. My friend Trevor is an investment advisor, and people come to him with large amounts of money and say, this is how we want to invest it. And he says, it's a weight on you because you're in a way acting on their behalf. You want to do the right thing. You don't want to see them get into trouble. And this idea is written here because there's a sense in which all of humanity is given the role of being stewards for God's creation. And also because we are entrusted with our life. And God says, live it to the way I want you to. Now again, the idea here is, with what you've been given, whatever that might be using it the way God would want you to, lest there be this sudden, unexpected outcome where the return happens. And there's some challenging language at the end of this story, and it's why this reading really needed to go to the end of the chapter, because this whole section raises the stakes somewhat. It's colourful first century language again. Just like the idea of Jesus coming like a UFO on the clouds of heaven is first century, so Jesus uses colourful language to describe weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's exaggerated language to make a point. And we use that all the time in our world. I was at the cricket and I saw Travis Head make an amazing century. And people said, Travis Head unleashed a whirlwind that blew England away. And we hear that and we don't say to ourselves, oh, wow, there must have been a big storm at the cricket and all the English players got blown off the field. No, we know what it means. And when we hear weeping and gnashing of teeth, it's not a literal depiction of some torture session, but rather some way of metaphorically capturing the idea that to be absent from God, or another way of looking at it is that when Jesus returns or life comes to an end in some way and we are brought into the presence of the God who is fully and ultimately love, if we've not oriented our lives to be open to that love, we will shrink from it and it will be terrible. And we'll hate the idea, because to be in the presence of beautiful love, if you've not lived a life where you're open to that love, would be torture indeed. That's how I understand, at least, this idea of the significance and importance of being ready. That we might be living now in the light of what will be when love is understood and pure light is seen. Some thinkers have said it's like if you imagine living life in a dark cave. And that's what it's like to live pushing God away and not being open to love. And suddenly you're taken out of the cave into the brightest daylight you can imagine. And what happens when that occurs? Oh, it's too much. I can't look. You close your eyes. You shrink from it. That's what it would be like to be brought into the presence of God's pure light and love. So there will come a time when, in whatever way we understand it, that is what will happen. It'll be a beautiful time, but the readings remind us that there is a serious challenge about that. But there will be a punchline. A woman has identical twins and gives them up for adoption. One goes to a family in Egypt and is named Amal. The other goes to Spain and is named Juan. Years later, Juan sends a picture of himself to his mum, and on receiving it, she says to her husband, oh, I wish I had a picture of Amal as well. But her husband said, but they are identical twins. If you've seen one, you've seen Amal. The Bible story will have a punchline. Are we ready?